You're looking at a woman who thought she'd done everything right.
It took me 40 years to build my future. It took one piece of paper to destroy it.
They tell you your whole life that if you work hard, if you play by the rules, you'll earn your rest.
You'll earn your security. My name is Elizabeth, and for 40 years, I did everything right.
I started as a secretary at 22. I brought my own coffee to save money. I worked through lunches.
I survived 3 mergers and 4 rounds of layoffs. I missed school plays. I worked with the flu. And every month, when I saw that tiny deduction on my pay stub for the pension fund, I'd smile. It wasn't money lost. It was a promise. My last day felt like a coronation. They gave me a gold-plated watch and a card. The boss said, "Enjoy your freedom, Liz. You've earned it." I believed him. That night, my husband Robert whispered, "Now we can really live, Lizzie, just you and me." We had plans, nothing fancy, a drive across the country, being grandparents who could babysit on a Tuesday. The pension was the cornerstone. That $2,800 a month was the difference between just surviving and actually living. It was our yes money. Yes to helping our daughter. Yes to fixing the roof. Yes to finally breathing.
I thought the hardest part was over. I was wrong. When the first pension statement came, I made tea and sat down like it was a small ceremony. The paper felt important, and there it was. Total annual benefit, $33,600. I did the math. Over 20 years, that was over $650,000. It wasn't just numbers. It was time. It was peace. It was the reward for every missed lunch and every late night. I remember touching that number on the page. I had done it. We had done it. I filed it away with the deed and the will. It felt like closing the cover on my working life. The next chapter was beginning, and it was going to be beautiful. 3 weeks later, a different letter arrived. It didn't look like the others. It felt cold in my hands. My fingers trembled opening it. The sound was too loud. I scanned the page. My eyes couldn't make sense of the words. Failure to comply. Mandatory recertification form not received. Benefit authorization revoked. Total liability, 0. 0! They said the value was 0. 40 years, gone. Because of a form? What form? I sent back every form. I told myself the office would fix it. That was the first mistake. I called the number. A recorded voice. Please listen carefully. Press 1. Press 5. Press 9. Your estimated wait time is 27 minutes. I held on listening to that awful cheesy music. I waited 27 minutes to hear canned music chew up my time. By the end, my future felt like it was disappearing in front of me. Finally, a click, a live voice. Thank you for calling Pension Benefits. How may I provide you with excellent service today? I tried to speak. My voice was a dry crackle. I explained. I begged. The voice was flat. I'm showing a notice was sent to you on October 12th, a Form B9. It was not returned within the mandatory 90-day window. But I never got it, I pleaded. I sent back all the other forms. The reply was ice. The system shows it was mailed. The policy is clear. Without the form, the benefit is suspended. Is there anything else I can help you with? I slammed the phone down. I sat at my kitchen table, in the home we could no longer afford, staring at the retirement watch. The gold plating looked cheap. The ticking was the loudest sound in the world. And I knew the dream was over. It wasn't a mistake. It was a catastrophe. And the worst part, the fight to get it back, was going to cost me everything I had left.
I thought denial would save me. It nearly destroyed me instead. For 3 days, I lived in a fog. I kept telling myself it was a computer error. Maybe someone with my name had missed their form. Maybe that woman on the phone was new.
pulled up the wrong account. I was going to call back, get someone who knew what they were doing, and this nightmare would just disappear. But Robert knew something was wrong. 43 years of marriage, and he reads me like his morning paper. "Lizzie," he said over breakfast, "you've been stirring that coffee for 5 minutes. What's got you twisted up?" I forced a smile. "Just retirement jitters, honey." The lie sat heavy in my chest. "How do you tell your husband with a bad heart that the golden years you promised him don't exist? That he might have to go back to work at 74? I couldn't. Not yet. So I pulled out every piece of paper I'd ever gotten from Prestige Manufacturing. Insurance forms, direct deposit changes, holiday party invitations. I spread them across the dining room table like evidence at a crime scene. I was looking for proof that I'd done everything right. And that's when I found something that changed everything. Buried in my files was the smoking gun I never knew I had. It was a letter dated September 20th, just 3 weeks before they claimed they'd mailed my form. The letterhead read, "Important notice regarding mail delivery." My hands started shaking as I read. Due to ongoing postal service disruptions in several zip codes, including 15213, we strongly recommend all employees verify their current addresses to avoid delays in critical correspondence. 15213. My old zip code. The apartment I'd moved out of 2 months before retirement. I called Prestige's HR department. After 20 minutes of transfers, I reached Margaret, who sounded like she'd been there since the Stone Age. "Oh, honey," she said when I explained. "I remember typing that notice. We had so many complaints about missing mail. The Postal Service was having real problems. But Margaret, I updated my address before I retired. I came in person. I filled out the form." Long pause. Typing sounds. Then, "Oh no, Mrs. Henderson, this is really bad." My heart stopped. What she told me next would reveal just how rigged this system really was. "Your address change is right here, dated September 25th. But," more typing, "oh God. The pension forms were mailed on October 12th to your old address. The system shows they knew about the mail problems, but they used the old address list anyway. How is that possible? Two different computer systems. The pension department runs their own database. It only updates quarterly. So when they mailed those forms," her voice trailed off, "they mailed them to addresses they knew were wrong. I'm not supposed to say this, but you're not the first call I've gotten about this." I hung up and stared at that notice about mail problems. They'd warned me about postal issues, then deliberately used those same issues to void my pension. It wasn't incompetence, it was strategy. I called the pension office again. This time, I wasn't begging. I was armed with facts. "Ma'am," the agent said after I'd explained about the postal notice, "it's the employee's responsibility to update addresses across all systems." All systems? How was I supposed to know about systems I'd never heard of? "That information is in the employee handbook." "What handbook? The one from '87? Policy is policy, ma'am. Is there anything else I can help you with today?" The casual cruelty in that voice, like my 40 years meant nothing, like I was just another number to be processed and dismissed. I hung up and sat in my kitchen, surrounded by paperwork that suddenly felt like weapons used against me. This wasn't an accident. This was a machine designed to chew up people like me and spit us out with nothing. I thought about Margaret's words. "You're not the first call." How many others were sitting in their kitchens right now, staring at termination letters? How many had their dreams destroyed by the same shell game? But what happened next would prove this conspiracy went deeper than I ever imagined. I decided to drive to my old apartment building. Maybe, just maybe, that form was still there. Maybe Mrs. Chen, my elderly neighbor, had collected my mail. It was a long shot, but it was all I had. The new tenants were a young couple with a baby. "Oh, you're Elizabeth," the woman said. "We've been getting your mail for months. The post office keeps delivering it here even though we've told them you moved." My heart leaped. "Do you still have it?" "Well, most of it we threw away, but there might be some in the junk drawer." She rummaged around and pulled out a small stack. "Is this important?" I flipped through bills, advertisements, and then there it was. A pristine white envelope from pension benefits, postmarked October 12th. Form B9. The form that had destroyed my life was right there in my hands. I tore it open with shaking fingers. It was simple, just a checkbox confirming I was still married to Robert, still living in Pennsylvania, something I could have filled out in 30 seconds. But as I read the fine print, my blood went cold, because what I discovered at the bottom of that form would expose the most sinister part of their plan. In tiny, barely readable text, it said, "Failure to return this form within 90 days will result in immediate and permanent termination of all benefits. This action cannot be reversed under any circumstances." Permanent, irreversible. One missed form, and 40 years of work became worthless. Forever. I sat in my car outside that apartment building, holding the form that could have saved my retirement, and I realized the truth. This wasn't just about me. This wasn't just about sloppy mail delivery or outdated computer systems. This was about a company that had found the perfect way to steal from their own employees. Mail forms to old addresses during postal disruptions. Make the consequences permanent and irreversible. Then sit back and watch the money they'd promised us disappear back into their pockets. And I was about to find out exactly how many millions of dollars they'd stolen using this exact same trick. I wasn't fighting a person anymore. I was fighting a machine designed to crush people like me. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at that form, turning it over in my hands like it was evidence in a murder case. Which in a way it was. The murder of my future. Robert was snoring peacefully beside me, and I wanted to shake him awake and show him what I'd found. But what was I going to say? "Honey, wake up. Our retirement is gone because of a piece of paper the size of a napkin?" Instead, I got up and made coffee at 3 in the morning. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, and I started digging. If Margaret was right, if I wasn't the first person this had happened to, then there had to be others. There had to be stories, complaints, something. And that's when I found them. I found Linda Morrison in Toledo, Ohio. She'd posted on a retirement forum 6 months ago, "Lost my pension over a missed form. 42 years at the steel plant, gone." I found James Patterson in Phoenix. Same story, same company, same mysterious form that never arrived. I found Martha Gonzalez in Tampa. She'd been fighting for 2 years. 2 years. I started making phone calls. I didn't care that it was early. I didn't care that these were strangers. I needed to know I wasn't alone. Linda answered on the third ring. "Hello? Linda, this is Elizabeth Henderson. I found your post about your pension. The same thing just happened to me." There was a long pause. Then she started crying. "I thought I was the only one," she whispered. "I thought it was just me." We talked for an hour. Her story was identical to mine. A missed form, sent to an old address during a postal disruption. Permanent termination of benefits. No appeals process. But Linda told me something that made my blood run cold. "You know what's funny?" she said. "My neighbor worked for the same company, retired 6 months before me. She got her form just fine. Same zip code, same mail problems, but somehow her form made it through. How is that possible?" Linda's voice dropped to a whisper. "I think they pick and choose. I think they decide who gets their pension and who doesn't. And if you're close to retirement, if you're about to cost them money, well, suddenly the mail stops working. That's when I realized we weren't dealing with incompetence, we were dealing with something much darker. I called James next. He was more angry than sad. "They're thieves," he said. "Plain and simple. 41 years I worked for them. 41 years of putting money into that pension fund. And now they're telling me it's gone because of a form I never saw?" "Did you ever get it?" I asked. "The form?" "That's the thing," he said. "I went to my old apartment, just like you did. The new tenant said he'd been throwing away my mail for months. But here's what's weird. He remembered throwing away pension stuff, multiple pieces, not just one form. Like they were sending me things, but sending them to an address they knew was wrong. Multiple pieces. They weren't just sending one form to wrong addresses. They were creating a paper trail of failure. Martha in Tampa was the most heartbreaking call. She was 82 years old, and she'd been fighting this for 2 years. 2 years of lawyers and appeals and paperwork, and she was broke. Completely broke. "They wore me down, Elizabeth," she said. "That's their strategy. They make it so expensive and so complicated to fight that eventually you just give up. My lawyer's fees ate up my savings. My daughter had to move in to help with the mortgage. But Martha told me something that changed everything. My lawyer found something," she said. "Internal company documents. They call it the efficiency protocol. They deliberately use outdated mailing lists during postal disruptions to reduce benefit payouts. They have a name for it. The efficiency protocol." I hung up and sat in my kitchen as the sun came up, surrounded by phone numbers and notes, and a growing understanding of just how deep this went. This wasn't random. This wasn't bad luck. This was systematic theft. I called the pension office one more time. I wasn't calling as Elizabeth Henderson, confused retiree. I was calling as Elizabeth Henderson, woman who'd found their game. "Thank you for calling pension benefits," the agent said. "How may I provide you with excellent service today?" "I'd like to speak to someone about the efficiency protocol," I said. Dead silence. "Then, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're referring to." "The protocol for sending forms to outdated addresses during postal disruptions to reduce benefit payouts." "Ma'am, I'm going to have to transfer you to my supervisor." More hold music, more waiting. Finally, a new voice, colder, more professional. "This is Manager Peterson. I understand you have some concerns about your pension benefits?" "I understand you have a systematic process for stealing from your employees," I said. "And I found others, lots of others. Ma'am, I need to advise you that making false accusations about company practices could constitute defamation. Now, if you'd like to discuss your specific case." "My specific case?" "My specific case is that you deliberately sent a form to an address you knew was wrong during a postal disruption you knew about, with consequences you made permanent and irreversible. And you did it to steal money from a woman who gave you 40 years of her life." The line went quiet for a long moment. "Mrs. Henderson," he finally said, "your case has been reviewed and the decision is final. There is no appeals process. Is there anything else I can help you with today?" "Actually, yes," I said. "You can help me understand how many millions of dollars you've stolen using this same trick. Because I've found the others, and we're not going away." I hung up and looked at Robert, who was standing in the doorway in his bathrobe, staring at me with wide eyes. "Lizzie," he said quietly, "what have you gotten yourself into?" I stood up and walked over to him, taking his hands in mine. "Bobby," I said, "I think I've gotten myself into the fight of our lives, because what I'm about to do next is going to make some very powerful people very angry. But if I don't do it, they're going to keep stealing from people like us until there's nothing left to steal. What are you going to do?" I smiled for the first time in days, a real smile. "I'm going to find a lawyer who's not afraid of a fight, and then I'm going to make them pay for every single pension they've stolen. If they thought I'd just roll over and die, they picked the wrong woman." Finding a lawyer wasn't easy. The first 3 I called listened politely, then explained why my case was hopeless. Big fancy words that all meant the same thing: go home and accept your fate. The 4th lawyer, David Chen, was different. "We need to move fast," he told me. Elizabeth, if we're right about this efficiency protocol, we're talking about federal crimes, wire fraud, mail fraud, maybe RICO violations. RICO? Like the mafia? Like organized crime? Yes. Because what you've described isn't incompetence. It's a criminal conspiracy. David was expensive. $15,000 retainer. I cashed out the little IRA I had left. While we waited for government records, I kept calling people. Linda from Toledo connected me with a Facebook group called Pension Fraud Survivors. 300 members, 300 stories just like mine. But Sarah from Denver gave me the breakthrough I needed. I worked in their corporate office, she told me. I was in HR for 12 years. Elizabeth, I sat in meetings where they discussed postal service disruptions as an opportunity. An opportunity for what? To clean up their pension obligations? They knew which retirees had moved recently. They knew which zip codes were having mail problems. And they used that information to decide who got their forms and who didn't. 2 weeks later, David called with news that made my hands shake. Elizabeth, the Department of Labor has been investigating Prestige Manufacturing for 8 months. They've identified over 2,000 cases of suspicious benefit terminations, all using the same pattern. The DOL found internal emails, smoking gun stuff. 2,000 cases, 2,000 people like me. But the next morning changed everything. David called at 7 a.m. Marcus Webb died of a heart attack yesterday. And Prestige Manufacturing just announced they're declaring bankruptcy and dissolving the pension fund. They're trying to make the whole problem disappear. But Elizabeth, bankruptcy doesn't erase criminal liability. I need you to go public with this story, press conferences, news interviews. We need to find where they hid the money. The courthouse steps were slippery with October rain, and I'd never been so terrified in my life. Maybe 200 people stood behind the reporters, holding signs. Prestige stole our futures. 40 years equals nothing. My voice shook. I'm just a woman who worked 40 years and got robbed on her way out the door. This is about a system designed to steal from working people. I pulled out documents. Internal emails calling elderly retirees legacy liabilities, meeting minutes discussing cost optimization, a presentation titled Reducing Pension Obligations in the Digital Age. The last question hit hardest. What would you say to other retirees afraid to speak up? I looked at that crowd. They're counting on you to be afraid. They're counting on you to give up. But look around you. We're not alone anymore. And we're not going away. 3 days later, David called with excitement I'd never heard. We found the money. $400 million in stolen benefits, hidden in offshore accounts, shell companies, executive compensation packages. The FBI raided Prestige's headquarters that afternoon. Agents carrying out boxes, executives in handcuffs, reporters shouting questions. 6 weeks later, David called again. The judge approved the settlement, full pension restoration for every victim. Elizabeth, you're getting $847,000. But it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about standing up to a system that thought it could crush people like me. 6 months later, I'm in my kitchen with morning sun streaming through windows I thought I might lose. Robert's making pancakes, humming. Yesterday he bought paint samples. We're turning the guest room into an office for the Elizabeth Henderson Foundation for Pension Justice. My phone rings. It's Linda from Toledo. My granddaughter got accepted to college. Thanks to the settlement, I can help pay for it. These calls come every day. But yesterday's was different. Mrs. Henderson? I work for Data Tech Industries, and I think they're doing the same thing to us. Missing forms, terminated benefits. We don't know what to do. I smiled and reached for a notepad. You called the right person. Because once you win, once you prove the system can be beaten, you can't walk away. There are too many people sitting in kitchens thinking they're alone. The doorbell rings. A delivery truck with a package, a framed copy of the court judgment. I hang it in the kitchen, right where the morning light hits it. My laptop chimes. A reporter working on a documentary about pension fraud. Would I tell my story one more time? I think about all the people who haven't called yet, all who think they're alone. I type back, yes. When do you need me? Robert's reading about pension reform legislation inspired by our case. The Henderson Act. It requires verified addresses, creates appeal processes, makes benefit terminations reversible if fraud is involved. There's a law with my name on it, I tell him. He grins. Elizabeth Henderson's Law. I like the sound of that. My phone rings again. Another company thinking they can steal from working people without consequences. I answer on the second ring. This is Elizabeth Henderson. How can I help you fight back? Sitting in my kitchen with sun streaming through windows and my husband humming over coffee, I realize something that makes me smile. They picked a fight with the wrong woman. And thanks to the foundation, they're going to keep picking fights with the wrong women. Over and over again. Because next time someone tries to destroy a 40-year dream with a piece of paper, they're not dealing with one scared retiree sitting alone in her kitchen. They're dealing with all of us. And we're not going anywhere.